So, um, Alex, at 7 o'clock on New Year's Eve morning, here we are, with my asking you to answer our secret question for the Marianne-a-thon. So, we wanted to do it secretly because we didn't want people to think about it a lot. And
Mhm.
you'll see with the question once I ask it to you that one could say so much. You could probably
Mhm.
talk for 2 hours if we were not to make this question so concise. So for the Marianne-a-thon, here is the secret question. If Martin Luther King had not been assassinated and instead became president, how would our country, we'll say country, although world too, how would it be different? What one thing would you like to talk about that would be different now? So I'm gonna say the question to you again.
Mhm.
If Martin Luther King had been president, what one thing would you like to talk about that would be different now?
Americans' defense spending.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, you know, when I think about Martin Luther King Jr., my first thought is nonviolence. That's my first thought. Someone that, as a student of the civil rights movement, and knowing that he's a foundation in that, but not the only piece. And as a student of the civil rights movement, I mean, I appreciated uh, the whole family, everyone that was involved in the whole spectrum. Martin Luther King Jr. comes out of that nonviolent, peaceful tradition, and the thought of him becoming president, if he would have been president, wow, we would have been out of Vietnam earlier. I don't think we wouldn't have done the bombing that we did in Cambodia and Southeast Asia in the early 70s. Gosh, we would have stayed out of, one of the things I love, Jimmy Carter always says one of the things he was most proud of was how he prevented so much. I think he gives a number like of no civilians lost or so, but he was just really proud of how he was able to minimize the amount of death during his presidency, Jimmy Carter. So if I think of a Martin Luther King Jr. presidency, uh, that I mean, we don't um, the excursions in Afghanistan, right? Just and we would have radically, structurally. I mean, just as he was killed, he had been. It was just a year after the war, the speech against the Vietnam War, and a lot of people that write about Martin Luther King Jr. now write about that. That was the radical king that that was reality based as opposed to this mythologizing of that we do, and we just say that I have a dream speech, and we don't really actually look at what he was saying at the time he was killed, and talking about just the American government being the largest purveyor of violence on the planet, um, talking about the war, how it diverted funds from a real war on poverty and addressing things. So he's talking about structural inequality. So the thought of all those being infused in some type of presidential policy and understanding just the mechanics of that, what that actually can be done, and then the bully pulpit and what that what that does. So that's those are my thoughts. But man, that's a great question, and boy, makes one dream.
Yes, it makes one dream again. And that does bring me to another question, and that is, how do you see his visions and his work and his legacy connected to who Marianne is and what Marianne is, her visions and her dreams and her enormous efforts?
I think the first thing love comes to mind.
Mhm.
That's the easy thing about being connected with Marianne and the campaign, because that's the first word that comes to mind, and that's what her
Mhm.
record has been about. And Martin Luther King Jr. said nonviolence and peace, and he spoke so often about love. I wish I could quote. I mean, I'm thinking about when he really goes into the distinction about agape, the Greek word for love, and
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
just, boy, it makes me want to go and go back and listen. So that love, not to make a pun, that love connection,
Mhm.
um, that's, uh, and well, the question that comes, what was your question again? And I got,
Well, I made it kind of, I put quite a few things in there, but really, where do you see the parallels
oh,
with the answer to your first question about immediately you said
oh,
defense spending and Marianne? So where do
oh.
you see the connections?
Her platform, well, yeah, before, like, in my answer to the first question, and I talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and the defense spending. In Marianne's platform, she talks about the ridiculous amount of defense spending and how that takes away from real investments, and she proposes a Department of Peace, you know so that is, I mean, that's right aligned with Martin Luther King Jr.
Mhm.
nonviolent drum major for peace.
Mhm. This is extraordinary. We can keep that recording going because there's just such richness here. And of course, we'll get it edited. But
Okay.
we
Cool,
were
cool.
we were just going to do 15 minutes, but this is so incredibly rich, Alex, that one of the things I'm thinking is we'll want to use other pieces. We would love to use some of this in the telethon, in the Marianne-a-thon.
You know what's great? I just popped in. We can use some of the pictures. We can use pictures, like in the things that I'm talking about. I can edit, and in a 20-second clip that we use, we can have some pictures of Martin Luther King and talking about those issues. And yeah, yeah,
Fabulous.
some good clips. Yeah. So yeah,
Fab.
good. And I have at least like till 7:30, 7:45, so I'm relaxed.
Oh, good. Well, let's just let this go where it wants to go.
Oh,
Um, I just lost my thought.
take it.
Do you happen to be free Friday, this coming Friday? Because it's the Friday before well, no, we'll have one more, but we do that Step in America phone call at noon on Fridays. Um, and so we've got this one coming up, which is going to be kind of firming it up. And then there'll just be one more Friday before the actual telethon on Saturday, the 13th. So do you happen to be free to come on that call on Friday?
Friday, January 5th. Which
Or
time? The,
noon.
the noon call. Okay. Yes, I am. I definitely am. And
Okay, I'll make sure you get the link. Oscar
okay.
sends the link out. The link is going to come from Oscar Carter.
Okay.
That
And
would be
it's
wonderful.
great. Is KRS-One still
Yeah,
involved in
that's
anything?
we're expecting him. Yeah. Yeah, what we're going to do with KRS-One is we're going to give him about an hour, and we've got three questions that besides that one question, but then we have three other questions that we're posing to KRS-One.
Hmm. Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
Yes, I am available, and I locked it in my calendar.
Great,
Mhm.
great. Okay, well, um, Ree is doing a lot of editing, so when we're done, if we can get that file to her. But I don't know. To me, it seems like editing is a pretty labor intensive task.
Mhm.
So I don't know, because actually the one that we did, a little while ago, there's so much richness in that, and you were going to look at that.
Yeah.
What
I
are your thoughts?
I can do that, and I plan on doing that. And I think I said like by next weekend, like to do that. And
Fabulous.
but I
Okay.
love this. I love to be able to what we're doing here. I can just send this to Aaron. Is it or who?
Ree, her name is
Three.
Ree, R-I-E.
Okay.
Yeah, she's been real active in the Step in America uh, project. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Good.
um, we can go back into the flow, or maybe that was just, I don't know, a little commercial break from the flow.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think a commercial break.
Oh, but there is something, you said, little clips, you have photos. Ree, is white, and she said she was, born, I think, just shortly after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. So she doesn't really, and this hasn't been her world. Um,
Oh,
so I think if you have any clips or shorts or how to do that, I don't know, there might be, I'm just thinking about who does what
you know,
task
one
happening.
one thing going with the flow, something I think just as the holiday approached and the Marianne campaign and looked and thinking about Martin Luther King Jr., something I'm really appreciating as a 54-year-old is that he was 38 when he died.
That's
It's
right.
wow, all of that in 38 years. And what
That's
is
right.
a 38-year-old, today? What kind of expectations do we have? And then
Right.
that and how it looked, I just I always say that I was a slacker till I was 38. That's what I say in public spaces all the time because I was that's when I went to China when I was 38 because I felt like stagnant in life. But yeah, that's the amazing one of the more I think amazing things about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that's not appreciated is just how young he was
Yes,
and what he
yes.
did.
Yeah. If you haven't listened to that video that Marianne did, that's all about Martin Luther King. It's a powerful video. And what we'll be referencing that. We'll be showing that at the very beginning of the Marianne-a-thon, and then we'll be referencing that video throughout as well.
Okay, the one when her father said those bastards did it.
Yes,
Yeah, that was
that's right.
yeah.
Mhm.
I need to complete watching that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, um, if I could turn the table a bit, like,
Mhm.
do you remember where you were when you heard Martin Luther King was assassinated?
Um,
Mhm.
you know,
And if not, just the times
no,
where.
that's all right. I'm just, yeah, I'm thinking about that. And this is something Marianne speaks about. I'm 76, Marianne is 71. So so I'm a little bit older than her. And what I remember was when JFK was assassinated. I was sitting in a Spanish class and it was announced over the loudspeaker. I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember all the schools were closed. And it was a gray, foggy day, rainy day. I was Evidently I was old enough to be in a car with friends, so I had to be 16. Um, yeah, because I graduated in 65 and he was killed in 63. So
68, Martin Luther King, or oh, Kennedy. You mean.
Kennedy,
Yeah,
yeah, because they went bam, 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 the
yeah.
military industrial complex. That's the way that I would call it. That's how I would call it. So we were riding around in Tecumseh. I grew up in Clinton, and it was such a dreary day. And the morning in the energy of the country was indescribable. So we just drove around in this gray soup that was the weather, not really even knowing what to do or how to process it. So that was when JFK was shot. And then, as it happens, this is just adding a little piece. A man who's been my spiritual director for over 30 years was a front man for Robert Kennedy.
Mm.
And he did the Whistle Stop tours with him. And so I know lots and lots of history about that, about Robert Kennedy. And I also remember, I also remember the day that Oswald shot, um, No, the Kurt, what was his name? Jack somebody.
Jack Ruby shot Oswald.
Jack Ruby shot Oswald in the jail. And they showed that, TV was a little bit different back then, but they showed that over and over and over again. And how did that man get in there with a gun and do that? I mean, so, so clear that it was. I haven't followed all the cover-up conspiracy theories, but there was a plan to assassinate him, obviously, that was bigger than some crackpot on a skyscraper or on a building. I also remember seeing the images of Robert Kennedy being assassinated over and over and over again. And to be honest, and this is probably because of the white community that I grew up in, it changed once I got older, but I remember more about Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated in some significant retrospect, not at the time. But what I also remember looking back is that period of time when there was so much protest and speaking out, and how that was all silenced. And Marianne speaks really powerfully about that. We got the message. Those of us who were nonviolent protesters and revolutionaries, shut up. And the other piece of that was like the cap on the bottle or something, the top, not the cherry on top, but the final blow was when the National Guard killed 4 students
Kent
at Kent.
State.
And I watched that over and over and over again. And what was happening at that time, we had the same division, truckers that are driving down the highway. They had a sign that they shared with each other. And the sign was 4 down. Yeah. That was the level of hostility around the protests of the war and the status quo. That TV series, that's so old, All in the Family, really showed that split really beautifully. It was such a split. When I got married in 68. There was a big conflict in my family because my now ex-husband, his hair was too long, and would he get his hair cut for the wedding?
Wow.
And he did. He succumbed. He looked ridiculous. He looked so there were huge splits back then. But I think these assassinations sent such a clear message to people who wanted to speak truth to power. This is what happens when you speak truth to power. So when Marianne makes a decision and does what she does, she knows exactly what she's dealing with. And she's been asked, are you afraid of being assassinated? And she said, those of us who have lived these times see where we are now. It is worse for us to think about dying without having done anything than by being killed for using our voices. She knows full well what she's doing.
There's so many great Martin Luther King Jr. quotes. One of the ones around that, I think when he talks about death, if you're not willing to die for something, you're not really living.
Right.
And when you're actually, your heart beating, I think it's just the belated announcement of an earlier death of this kid, I think is what he said. So, yeah, that's Marianne's living. She's
Oh yeah. Yeah. The energy, the power that she's putting into this campaign is absolutely breathtaking.
I'm trying to think of another. I'll probably cut out the last like
Oh,
7 or 8 10 minutes.
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I'm just talking.
Something good for there's another aspect, Martin Luther King Jr.'s youth and Marianne. Um her in her platform just the focus on poverty. On poverty. And I think kind of in the start of your first question about like Martin Luther King Jr. presidency, I think it would mirror Marianne's platform, especially from that poverty, that lens on poverty, and the evolution of that in Marianne's platform. I think it reckons there's trauma is mentioned in there several times. She recognizes the impact of trauma, and how that intersects with poverty and how that intersects with the criminal justice system also. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
yeah, that's yeah, they definitely parallel
mhm,
each other.
they
Like
do. And such an important thing. I was campaigning in the pool at the fitness center yesterday.
Mhm.
And there's a very attractive young black man who was an employee. And we just, all of us around we're all talking about Marianne. And I mentioned he's just walking by. I'm in the pool, he's walking by. And I said, "Do you know Marianne Williamson?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, you need to know." I said, "Look her up." So right then he looks on his phone and he shows me, he's walking by later. He says, "Here, I looked her up." And I said, "She has a department." I don't know if this was the first thing, how exactly the order, but something about children. I think it was him, and maybe it was a video he watched. He said, "The way that she's speaking for the children, I am all in."
Mm,
Young man that I'm guessing maybe didn't have children. I don't know, very young man.
mm,
But that was what struck him, was her speaking for the children.
mm. Man, yeah, I'm gonna check out her platform again. It's been
Mhm.
a while. Those yeah, the defense spending, poverty platform, police, excuse me. So many things just really spoke out.
Oh yeah. Oh, as a matter of, yeah, the Cop City is such a powerful video where she gathered together those activists in that arena. Incredibly powerful
Yeah.
video, but horrifying topic.
Yeah. Yeah. About wasted resources and harm.
Yeah, wasted resources in harm. Isn't that an interesting statement? Wasted resources in harm.
Yeah.
Good Lord. What a kind of what a thing to say. What,
Well, yeah, that's I mean, that's part of the that immediate attraction to Marianne's platform was looking at it and seeing how those same issues and forces played out locally here. And here in Washington, 70% of the budget connected to the carceral system, 50% to the sheriff, and then 20% to like probation and judicial and things. So 70% to me, uh, that upholding these systems that cause harm, you know, and that I always think that opportunity cost,
opportunity
like
cost.
that.
Okay.
So it makes me hopeful, like really, because I think it's so ridiculous,
Mm,
and that I think it it stays in motion and continues because of this void in media and this ignorance and disconnect. And I think out of just necessity, those things are connecting more, and it's just not tolerable conditions. So like this, I'm a realist, but yeah, and I'm not crazy. I wouldn't be doing all this stuff if I didn't think it could go somewhere. If I wasn't, and I do. I'm really hopeful about things on the local level. at least here in
On
Washington.
the local level. Yeah.
Yeah.
That brings up an interesting thought for me. I mentioned my friend who was worked with Robert Kennedy. He also worked with Edward Kennedy, and he also actually roomed for a while with the guy that's running now, the Kennedy, who is, I think it's Robert, isn't it?
I got to share with you, Pat, because this will make like there's two smart candidates that I was talking to locally, like so what's it, smart Ann Arbor candidates that you that you'd like. Um, we were talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and um neither of them really knew his dad's history that much, and that was amazing.
They didn't know his dad's history. That's interesting. But I do want to tell you this. He is a nut.
Yeah.
He's a nut. I just wanted to
hmm
firsthand knowledge. The family knows it too.
hmm
Um, yeah,
What what I brought it up because of Robert Kennedy. Like I growing up, I'd always been an admirer also and understand. But there's a huge
right.
gap among a lot. They have no idea about uh, Robert F. Kennedy's legacy and that
That's
his
great. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember so many spots, I guess it was on the TV or books or something of them, talking about the war on poverty and what was happening with the war on poverty with Robert, and I think JFK was still around at that time, wasn't he?
Uh, well, I think of, and maybe you can help me. Maybe both. Yeah, I'd ask you. But when I think of Robert Kennedy. I think of like post after his brother killed in '63. And it seems like he kind of grew in a bit also, and seemed more invested in the civil rights movement and also poverty. And
Mm,
what really comes to mind is doing tours of the South,
yes.
and then just yeah, and drawing comparisons to just third world countries and the abject poverty that he saw there for the first time. It really highlighted, you know, and endeared him to a whole lot of people.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, yeah, I did see, I don't know what it was on, a documentary of him that really laid it out quite beautifully. But yes, absolutely. That's how I see him too.
Yeah, but it's yeah, but there's huge learning. Well, I don't, I was about to say huge learning curve. Humans, countries, we evolve, things change. I'm always drawing comparisons to like my childhood and how I was taught things and people that I talked to and information and how I learned, but those days are gone. There's just kids are growing up in a different environment now.
Hmm.
Um, so to recognize that, and I guess I can't get stuck. Yeah, most of the time that's an often something that I've recognized in myself lately, that I'm talking about the past and so often, and I don't think I'm recognizing how, yeah, that's over. This is, that's just the human experience, collectively.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.